Not one, but 2 0 days are being used to spread a new Mirai variant.
So Stan, I hear we have a new Mirai variant. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yes, we do. And I think this officially brings the number of Mirai variants to become greater than the number of grains of sand on Earth. So ever since the Mirai source code was released, also many years ago, people have been basically using that as a framework to create new variants, new botnets, but with slight variations. So the great team at NetLab 360 did a very interesting, pretty thorough write-up of this threat. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. For some reason, it looks like TINT to me, but it's TTINT. I guess there's no guide for pronouncing malware names for sure. It's actually based on a string inside, somewhere buried deep inside the binary. In any case, it's this new botnet, and the thing that's unique about it is that it has many more features than previous Mirai variants. So previously, Mirai, we've all known, is a DDoS botnet. That's what it does. Even though there have always been variants, that primary function has always existed. Do DDoS, you just spread using different vulnerabilities. But this variant has added something like 12 new features or 12 new types of commands that it can execute, as well as it actually spreads using a zero-day vulnerability. Not really familiar with the zero-day vulnerability for this router. It's called Tenda, so it's some sort of I guess one of these kinds of routers you could get, and it has several vulnerabilities overall, but these two are being used to spread this Mirai variant TTINT. Now, what are some of the interesting new capabilities in this threat? And we actually see this quite a bit, is the use of a proxy. So once your device becomes compromised, or once this Tenda router becomes compromised, your router may act as a SOX proxy for other people on the internet to conduct some sort of a nefarious activity. And actually, whenever a threat adversary seems to, they kind of have stages of how they approach things or different targets. And it seems like DDoS is like that first business model. Like everybody understands DDoS, got it. The next business model seems to be running a proxy, an anonymization proxy all over the world using compromised infrastructure like this. So it's very interesting. There's a couple of other unique things that are interesting about this threat from just a technical perspective. I definitely encourage people to go out there, read the article, see the analysis for themselves. The C2 is a little bit different and works over WebSockets instead of working over some binary protocol like it did before. And there's some really interesting observations that NetLab 360 made in their blog, and I encourage everyone to read it. Just lets us see that adversaries never rest. They're always developing new features. Just like software developers, they take existing code, existing features, existing libraries, and build on top of them.
Yeah, Stan, two things really stuck out at me when I was reading the article. The first was the use of the WebSockets over TLS, which could make tracing the C2 more difficult. Using real certificates, they can encrypt it and go over a different socket. The other thing that really struck me, though, was one of the additional capabilities in this was the self-upgrade. And the thing that immediately occurred to me was MyDoom. Now, I know I'm showing my age here because MyDoom is from 2004. But, shortly after MyDoom came out, there was the follow-on malware DoomJuice that went around taking advantage of the socket that it had put up there for self-upgrade and replacing it with different type of malware. So I'm wondering if somebody's going to come along behind this one and try to take advantage of that self-upgrade feature to replace it with their own malware. But yeah, it's a fascinating write-up, and I agree. I highly recommend folks read it, because this is they do good work at the Net 360 labs there, and this write-up is excellent for those who are interested in analyzing malware and seeing what the capabilities are. Yeah, and if you've got a Tenda router, make sure that you've patched it with whatever patches they've got out that hopefully close those 0 days too.
Yes, that's very important. They did mention that one of the vulnerabilities is still undisclosed and doesn't have a CVE number. So, our recommendation in these situations is always not to expose like the web administrative interface on routers to the internet. Most likely it's something in the web management interface that can cause the problem. So definitely if Tenda wasn't something I was familiar with, but if Tenda sounds familiar to you watching the show, definitely upgrade the firmware, and definitely just double check your network settings to make sure you're not inadvertently exposing the administrative interface on the internet side. That's very, very important.
Yeah. Scan yourself from somewhere else,
Yes.
From the outside.
From the outside, yeah. Because if you scan inside, you'll get everything else. But yeah, from the outside.
Yeah, that's a very good advice as well. And it's possible you should probably occasionally just stick your own IP address into Shodan or something. See what does Shodan have on you. What do you pop up with, and what kind of services do they think you're running? And you might be surprised.